AI is this great, shiny new power tool that we have in that toolbox. So we should be excited about it. You're only going to get as much as you put into it.
Yeah.
And what happens when you choose science over art completely is that you cannot build a brand. When you choose art over science, you're not building a business. But it's still simplicity is what wins every single time. You have to get really good at selling what the ultimate benefit is, not the wizardry behind the curtain that makes that come true. Failures are success. You just have to reframe it. Now more than ever, the skill that is valued and will continue to be valued is original thought and ideation.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the AI Marketer podcast, where we go beyond the hype and talk about exactly how people are using AI in their work. I'm your host, Neha Mittal, founder of Just AI, and every week we bring you real stories, real results, and no fluff. Today, I'm joined by Rae Hoki, who runs marketing for FitXR, a VR fitness platform, betting big on the convergence of headsets and the future of smart glasses. Very excited to hear all about it. But Ray's story starts somewhere where a lot of marketers would recognize Dollar Shave Club, where she was trained by world-class creatives and marketers and watched a disruptive brand become a case study, which people still use today. Really, really exciting background, Rae. Thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit about your original story, how you got started, and sort of what you're up to.
Yeah, it's really great to be here. Thank you so much. This is an important topic to talk as creatives and marketers. So I'm just excited to talk with you today. Um, so yeah, my backstory is a very non-traditional one, and so I feel very humbled by that often, in that I got to be exposed to a really successful startup early on and be part of that journey, and then from there have been able to kind of leverage that playbook into many different frameworks of different types of organizations, different industries, and really apply it in ways that have been transformative across many of them. And so now with the convergence of AI, it's really exciting to see how those playbooks adapt and form, but still kind of rest on the foundations of what make them successful in the first place. So it's a real treat to be a marketer in this environment, if you look at it that way, and it's easy to look at it as the opposite. But I think like we'll get into my view of how I view it in this conversation.
Yeah, yeah. And from our chat earlier, I remember you've of course been in big brands, but also in really, really small, scrappy startups. Tell us a little bit more about sort of what was that difference like, and what was the contrast, and how do you use it today?
Yeah. What's really interesting about the difference between bigger brands, smaller brands is that, again, like a lot of the foundational principles remain the same. So, one thing in particular that carries through all of my career is the concept around great consumer insights driving really important change in your marketing program. And that doesn't change whether you're working for a big brand or a small brand. The consumer being at the center of what you're doing is so critical. And I think that's very common knowledge. It's really easy. It's like that's that's a popular opinion. That's not a hot take. What's really difficult is to be able to identify great consumer insights that then lead into that work becoming really, really
Yeah.
successful for you. So that's one thing that's very similar in every piece of work and every business that I've been in is the through line of great consumer knowledge and insights that feed into the creative process that make everything work way harder and be more powerful for you at the end of the
Hmm.
day.
What are examples of what those insights look like, maybe for a couple of companies? And give me a little bit on, yeah, how you translated that into you're implementing it for the company
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
So one really good example right now that we're experimenting with. So at FitXR, obviously we're an app that exists on a headset. So there's a hardware requirement for somebody to come in and use our product. But what we've recently learned about a large portion of our user base, specifically women in our user base, is the fact that they didn't buy the headset and the headset was purchased for somebody else in their household, and that
Okay.
headset has gone idle. And
Okay.
as the house manager looking at a piece of technology sitting idle, there's a lot of desire to figure out how to make that valuable again in the household. And so what's happening for a lot of our users is that they're picking up the headset that was purchased for somebody else, and then they're finding value in it for themselves when it wasn't purchased for that reason in the first place. That's really powerful for us to know, because now we can take that into the creative pipeline and we can say, we need to be talking to women at with a value message of this piece of technology that's collecting dust in the corner. That's like a really good example of finding a great creative insight that leads to good creative strategy that powers great marketing.
That is so powerful because it hits home for me. I've got at least 4 headsets sitting in the house collecting.
Okay, well, we gotta get you into FitXR.
Just going through sort of your take on AI and the customer sentiment around it, right? Because there's different flavors to it, where on one hand we're hearing, hey, but everybody's talking AI, but does it even work? Are we getting the quality that we need, right? And on the other hand, to your point, there's also this like whole sentiment of, is it taking jobs?
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So consumer sentiment around AI, I do believe is largely negative. But there's this conversation that brands have to be careful of around quality. And I think that quality is really relative depending on what platform you're talking about and what your brand standards are. So I think in the context of like consumer sentiment and where it intersects with brand quality is really like a dynamic that we have to keep playing with over time. Um, because consumers are craving quality, they always have, but they're also craving authenticity. And those things are very different depending on what platform that you're operating on, and again, what your brand standards are around both of those aspects.
Hmm.
So the quality bar should be set by brands, and consumer sentiment around AI should be factored in. But there's no right or wrong answer to either one of them, because it's all relative to what you're trying to do from a brand standpoint and what the platforms and what makes the platforms work best.
Yeah, makes sense. Do you see that evolving in a certain way? And I know that's a hard one. We don't know how to predict that. But do you imagine the sentiment, for example, becoming more receptive that, okay, we get it, half of the content is going to be AI, our quality bar has changed, gone down maybe for what it's worth, or the other way, right? Where it's gone higher and AI better catch up. Otherwise, we won't see adoption. What do you predict in the next couple of years? What would that be around?
I do think sentiment will start to shift more positively. I think consumers are finding AI to intersect their daily lives in many, many ways, and that's changing very rapidly. And I think the companies that are driving that are doing a pretty tremendous job at shifting the value statement from something that I don't want to something that I need to have in my day-to-day life. And so I do think that that pendulum is going to shift, and the more consumers start to use it, the more they start to understand it, which I think is a key piece in all of this. And as the ecosystem changes to ease people's fears around AI taking jobs and security concerns and all of those aspects, I do think that we will start to see that settle out, and then the pendulum will swift towards more of a positive change. But it's going to take a lot of work from the businesses driving this tooling forward for us to see that happen.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense, yeah. On the ground level, how should a creative-led marketer navigate the situation, right? Like people are skeptical of tools. Yeah, at the same time, there's so much top-down pressure, I'm sure, for the industry to adopt things, right? So yeah, what's your practical advice around that?
So here's the thing, like marketers have always needed to have a great toolbox. That's always been the case. That will always be the case. AI is like this shiny new power tool that we have in that toolbox. So
Hmm.
we should be excited about it. On the other hand, we have to be respectful about consumer sentiment. And so my belief around marketing, and specifically in product marketing, the best product marketing in the world is selling a consumer a benefit at the end of the day.
Hmm.
And so I think like neither of these two things change, even with the entrance of AI, right?
Hmm.
AI is a great tool for us to use as marketers. It makes our jobs in some respects easier. It makes the velocity of our work go further. And on the consumer side, it makes it so that we can present benefits to them in ways that we never have been before. And
Hmm.
so to me, it doesn't really change the underlying principles of what makes great marketing. It's just like a new entrance and a new player into that field that influences what can be true on both sides.
That makes sense. You said something interesting about AI being part of the toolbox and marketers always needing that. What is your take on, does AI become the toolbox? Does it accelerate what you have today and just augments those tools? Yeah, I'm curious, where does
Yeah.
that fit in that? Yeah.
I think that most, if not all of the tools that we're used to working with as marketers will become AI tools if they haven't already. I mean, it's
Mm,
it's actually pretty hard for me to think about a tool that we've been relying on for marketing in my role that hasn't been influenced by AI in one way or another. So I guess to that end, yes, I believe that the toolbox will be largely AI influenced in a very short period of time, if it isn't already for many marketers. I was just
yeah.
speaking to somebody today who's running like a very small business, and the only reason he's able to run that business is because it's fully powered by AI.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see a lot more of that pop up.
It's funny, I was talking to somebody, they were talking about a world where it's all solo founders and running businesses by themselves with a bunch of agents. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But something else, like what you're saying reminds me of is we were just talking about how we started with embedding AI in different tools to make them AI tools. And now we're asking the question if those tools should be embedded in a consolidated AI setup. We'll see. A lot of this is art, a lot of this is science, right? It's all coming together. Um, and neither is like less important or, neither one is a constant. Um, in your day-to-day work today, how are you making the judgment call on sort of what to automate, where do you bring science, and what is sort of like taste and judgment?
As a marketer that was born out of the brand side and really caring about the craft and the creative, my instinct to that question is that I can never look at something and not think about the art.
Mm,
But the
mm,
practicality in that is, I kind of think of it as it's never a choice between the two. I really fundamentally do believe that, even with AI influencing so
mm,
much of what we do right now. And the way I think about it is like the science brings you the requirements of what must be done, and the art is what gets put onto the canvas that requirements enable. And so what happens when you choose science over art completely is that you cannot build a brand. When you choose art over science, you're not building a business. So there
mm.
has to be a convergence between the two. And that's why the marriage of art and science works very, very well, to both build a brand and build a business. Neither side of the coin is more important than one another. They both equally have to coexist, and they both require a tremendous amount of skill. And I find this to be this question and this debate between the art and the science to be a really common tension point in especially startup businesses who are trying to get up off the ground and running. Um, it's a difficult balance to enable, and it's a difficult balance to strike over time, but I feel very strongly that you have to have capabilities on both sides of it, and AI can power both sides of it in different ways, and you just have to play with the mechanics to see how you get that formula working the best for your business.
Yeah. What does it look like? Again, either a conversation or an example from your current, setup. What kind of conversations are you having with your team around this? Where give us a flavor of that tension.
Yeah. Um, so we've done a lot of experimentation at FitXR, especially we're doing a lot of experimentation overall at FitXR, but specifically on the marketing team. And they're like, I do have to nurture a team through a high amount of skepticism because it's unknown, and it's this like change management that we're going through of I've always done it this way, and I'm excited about what it could be, but it takes a learning curve to get there.
Hmm.
So the way that we've applied it a lot is I like to focus the team in identifying problem statements that can be solved with AI. So on tasks that feel really repetitive and manual and time consuming, that takes us away from using the real value that we bring here, which is our brain power and the expertise that we can put on the table that you can't replace with AI. I'm trying to coach my team in building the discipline to identify those problem statements and then placing experimentation on top of that to be able to solve that. So for my growth manager, that's very much more in the science camp. For my
Mm,
creative director, that's much more of the art camp.
mm,
But the
mm.
print, like again, I keep reiterating kind of this idea of like the principles are still the same. You just
Yeah,
apply them differently depending on the functional area that you're serving.
that makes so much sense. We see that too, where it's like the foundations and principles are still the same. In fact, for what it's worth, you got to reiterate them so much more now because people have this tendency of, oh, let me just like take all my creative power and just like get lazy about it and then have AI figure it out and then you get slop out of it. Right?
Exactly. The foundations really matter because you have to know what put into them to get what you want out of it. And so it's figuring out how to take that knowledge and almost like pass it on to get the output that you want. It's a real talent that needs coaching and building and time to
Hmm.
perfect.
Yeah.
It's not out of the box.
Yeah. Um, I want to dig in a little bit deeper on where you think AI should and shouldn't play. Um, um, do you think it's better placed in front of the process itself? So let's say you've defined a process on how you're running campaigns or how you're doing marketing, and AI is sort of the accelerator around insights and larger decisions and strategy, or do you think it fits right in execution as well? Yeah, where do you think?
I think it has a place across the entire spectrum of what you just outlined. I don't think that you pick and choose where to place it. I think the reality is like it can be tremendously powerful to unlock insights because there's capabilities of looking around the world for signals that you wouldn't be able to spot otherwise without the power of what AI tooling can do there. You can also apply it at the ideation phase, not to come up with the original ideas. That's not where the strengths are right now, but it can be used to help fully think through an idea. Or maybe you have a bunch of scattered ideas and random thoughts that
Mm,
models can help you stitch together and find the commonalities between them. That can be really powerful. It can also, and one way that we're using it right now is to produce derivative work. So if we have, especially in performance marketing, where creative volume is such a critical dependency to be able to make that engine work for you, derivative work is really required. And that's a very manual process right now. And it doesn't require a ton of skill, but it requires a lot of like stitching together of assets.
mhm.
So it can be applied throughout the process. And I don't think it's a choice of when and where, but as long as you have that quality through line placed at every stage of that, then I think that's where the relationship between um, AI being applied across the spectrum can be really powerful and transformative.
That makes sense. That makes so much sense. I like that framing of like having that quality line set and then let AI run more autonomously. Yeah.
It's really hard. The quality through line is hard to maintain. Um,
Yeah.
it's hard to set the bar in the first place, and it's really hard to maintain it because it's so easy to get distracted and to get, interested in this other thing that's very exciting and shiny, but you do have to sort of like set the standard and build the discipline to hold that standard. Otherwise, things can really go awry.
Yeah, yeah. Well, on that note, I'm curious. You've been like coaching and nurturing your team towards it too. Where has AI genuinely leveled up your team's thinking, and where do you think there's still work that needs to be done? And I know it's very hard, right? Like you said, to draw that through line and then run within it, but also it's not a clear line. Everybody's going to take their own calls, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I keep coming back to this insights piece just because I do find it to be one of the most important things that marketing teams can discover and use in their work. So we have found a tremendous amount of additional ways to gather insights through tooling. And so that's been a huge area of success for us. On the flip side of that, we've had a few we've had a few like hiccups and stumbles. So we got attracted to the idea of generating content that was fully AI, and we
Yeah.
wanted to explore that.
Yeah.
And it was a huge flop. And it
Yeah.
didn't hit that quality bar, and we weren't excited. We were excited about it going into it, and then we saw the outcome of that. And so we pulled back. But
Yeah.
the great thing about being in like lean teams like this, where experimentation is part of the expectation of what you're doing, is that you can fail fast. And as
Mm.
long as that failure turns into a learning that you apply to the future, that in itself is a success. So
Hmm.
that's actually like a pretty interesting thing as like a coach in all of this that's been helpful and transformative for the teams thinking about this, is that failures are success. You just have to reframe it. And part of the power of AI, maybe more broadly to answer your question, is the fact that we can fail faster. And that's been an interesting discovery that I think is maybe a little bit unsaid at the beginning of all this experimentation, but it is true, and it's very helpful in that regard.
Yeah, that's such a meta but powerful insight, right? It's like AI is almost enabling you to try new things, throw them out if they don't work faster
Yeah,
than than you could. And I 100% agree, right? Like the power of AI is for you to learn quickly rather than getting to a perfect world in a short amount of time. Right?
yeah. And you even just like prototyping something before, like, and it never even gets shared externally, but the ability to be able to explore it to that level of fidelity so quickly,
Mm-hmm.
um I mean, that's like that it's really like risk mitigating, and it's very helpful for especially small teams.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um, Makes sense. Um, let's see. I want to switch gears and talk about uh, sort of where AI even fits in marketing, or if it doesn't at all. uh, and so, where do you think that in the larger consumer conversation, um, is AI even important? So, for example, is there a world where you're doing a very good job of selling the benefit, the product clearly shows value, and like AI may or may not have to do anything in that world, and that's totally okay. Right? Yeah, tell us what your opinions are there. And I'll share my own sort of examples right
Sure.
after. Yeah.
I think that the answer to that is um, very, very contextual. We know that consumers value instant gratification, right? So there's value in AI supporting that desire that consumers have. If you're selling a product that fits that need, maybe it is really important for you to have AI. But there are other products that rely on the value that craft brings to the table, or something that's just not instant. I think it's just like it's very contextual to what you're trying to sell at the end of the day, I think is my
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah.
Um, and I still just like fundamentally believe that you have to get really good at selling what the ultimate benefit is, not the wizardry behind the curtain that makes that come true.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah. No. Sort of as I was asking you this, I was talking to a colleague who was mentioning how they're a dog food business, and they're like, it's profitable, and we've figured out our operations. We're running factories, and by the way, nobody in the company talks about AI at all, and we kind of don't have to. Right? Like we're doing great. We should know about it, but
Yeah. Yeah.
we've tackled the true problem. Um,
It's interesting when, the old saying of if it's not broken, don't fix it. I feel like
that's
that's
right.
how a lot, I think that's how a lot of businesses are feeling about AI right now is, and again, it's this like change management. And it's like they're aware of it and they understand potentially what it could bring. But if they're looking at the reality right now, and that doesn't feel necessarily broken, it can be hard to take that step into changing it because it's so uncertain and it's so unclear, and the benefit that it will bring to you feels a little bit intangible. So like I've talked to many people in businesses who are similar to that, and I think there's also this fear that AI experimentation can be really distracting because you want to chase the shiny object, but you have to chase that at the expense of something else that you're doing because it takes time and there's a learning curve and all of that. So that's a really interesting view on it as well, as this sort of like fear of changing something that's currently working really well.
Yeah, it's so true. And there's such bizarre examples of this that I see where it's like, oh yeah, we could click a button and do it, but now we're going to use AI to do it. And it
Yeah.
takes us all of 10 minutes, but it's AI.
Yeah, right.
We're
But it's
like,
AI,
why?
so it must be better.
Yeah, why are you trying to fix a problem that did not exist,
Yeah,
right? Right,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. It's really tempting. It is really tempting.
yeah. Um, awesome. Well, want to go to something that I'm very interested in learning from you is it's around how you worked in larger organizations, but also now a very lean team, right? It's like under 40 people or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, and I relate to that because again, our team is pretty lean, but also we serve very large companies. And so we see, on one hand, we see the differences in sort of what our marketing looks like and the marketing teams we serve, but also, like you said, some of the core principles and fundamentals don't change, right? Uh, uh, Tell us a little bit on like what actually changes about the craft when you look at your team versus a larger brand.
Yeah. Um, I think the main thing comes down to where we can afford to really invest the time in the craft. And so what we do at FitXR to be able to manage that specifically within marketing is that we really have to understand what aspects of what we're doing drive measurable impact to the business. And we
Mm,
know what that is. We know exactly the surfaces that if we can influence to a certain amount, it will drive this level of impact. So then we
mhm,
look at that surface and we say it's really critical that we apply craft to this area of what we're doing.
mhm,
And that comes from both the art and the science, right? We want the
mm,
mechanics to be exactly what they should be. We want to be hitting those best practices and evolving them over time. And then from an art standpoint, we want to make sure how we're showing up on that surfaces is polished because we know when we show up in that way, it drives that impact. So that's the biggest thing is having to be more more thoughtful in where we invest the time to really elevate the work and to be okay with letting some other stuff go. Whereas in bigger brands, you have more resources to kind of like treat all things more equally. Uh,
mm,
and
mhm.
so, as a byproduct of that, I think the other thing that is more challenging to keep up with in leaner orgs is that idea of consistency and making
Yeah.
sure that everything's hitting a certain bar at all times.
Mm,
And that's just not realistic for us and for many businesses of our size. So it is just sort of the phased prioritization planning that many of us are familiar with, and just applying that at every level of what we're doing relative to the resources that are available.
that's right. I'm gonna ask you a different question. Like, if you were to flip this, so what you can do that I think a lot of large companies cannot is you could start marketing from scratch in a very different fashion, without any baggage that a large company cannot because of all the bells and whistles and all the processes
Sure.
in place,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of companies are thinking about it. When I talk to them, they're thinking about a world where it's like, if you could restart everything, here's how we would do it, right? Organizations would look different, tools would look different, all that good
Sure.
stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, what would like, yeah, well, how would you, if you were to go to now back to your previous world, in a large brand and they said, look, nothing exists here, right? The scale exists, but no baggage, not no red tape, right? What would that look like? How would you get started? What kind of decisions would you make?
Hmm.
And what would look different, I guess, compared to what you've seen? Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I think it might be similar to the conversation we were just having around really understanding what's driving impact for you
Mm,
and making sure that where you're focusing 80% of your time is focused on the things that really meaningfully drive the business forward. Um, or, and that can be on a number of different measures, right? For some businesses that will look like hyper growth, and for others that will be brand building, or for other, it can look many different ways, but understanding what that North Star is from the business perspective and then build like focusing the time and energy on getting the most critical things done right first,
Mm.
Like if I was to go to any brand, like any business, any brand of any size, I think what often happens is that you try to do everything really, really well out of the gate, and therefore
Yeah.
it's really hard to do everything
Yeah.
really well because you're trying to do it all at once. But I think that like being like playing a more narrow juggling act is probably the principles that I've learned in leaner orgs that work really, really well that can still apply to like the big brand format.
I love that. So creating focus and doing one or two things well rather than trying to do everything.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And it's so
And
true. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it like it circles really nicely back to this conversation of AI tooling too. Same exact thought process there, which is that if you know you have a problem or you have a grouping of problems or whatever, stack rank them and figure out what is the problem that's really impacting your business the most. Great, now go focus your team on solving that problem before you tackle the next in line.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a really like linear procedural operational way of thinking about it, but it has worked really well for me and especially in these leaner teams. But I have to believe that that whole theory of just focus is really beneficial and hard for businesses that are trying to
Yeah.
expedite and be first to market or whatever the goal might be.
No, you're absolutely right. It's funny because we talk a lot about focus in the company. It's like, hey, we're lean, you gotta like really focus and create results. And to be fair, in larger companies like Twitter and whatnot, focus was always a discussion point, right? Prioritization and focus. I think the only difference is that stakes are higher, right? Everybody's work time not well spent means a lot here, right? Compared to a larger company. So maybe let's take a more concrete example. So, we've been talking about creative, talking about art and science. Walk us through translating, let's say, a big brand creative skill um, set onto a small optimized surface. So let's say a store listing or, any example that comes to mind. How would you break it down? What does that process look like?
The through line on all of those things for me, and you're probably not going to be surprised to hear this answer from me, but it boils down to simplicity. What makes a
Yeah.
great 360 campaign work and stick and last in people's minds is the fact that it rests on one idea. You're only asking the viewer or the consumer of who you're reaching to remember one thing.
Mm,
It's the same when we look at the store and like much
interesting.
smaller surface, much narrower audience, but it's still simplicity is what wins every single time. And
Yeah.
that's a framework we can apply to copywriting. That's a framework we can apply to keyword targeting. That's a concept we can apply to the art that lives on these surfaces. Um, but simplicity is probably one of the hardest things to land on
Yeah.
because when you're looking at this beautiful thing that you've built and polished and you've put so much love and passion into, you kind of like you want to put it out on your front lawn like a yard sale. And you're
Yeah.
like, I want you to know this about me and that about me, and these things are important too. And oh yeah, what about this thing over here? It's really hard to pick that one thing that you want to be known for, or that the consumer needs to hear at the right time. And that's to me like the key that makes a 360 idea work just as much as like what your subtitle is on your store page.
Hmm.
And it's often the hardest thing to decide, but also something that's pretty easy to experiment and test with,
Mm.
um, which is what gives the store service a lot more advantage over a 360 campaign because it's highly testable.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that is so powerful. We talk about simplicity all the time, and for the same exact reasons you mentioned, it's like we built this beautiful product, we've got 100 different features, we're going to talk about all of them, and then it's like, wait, now the user is trying to understand what are you actually trying to, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because
yeah,
attention span is limited, and I've got so many different distractions happening around me right now, let alone when I'm, consuming a piece of marketing, and
yeah,
you can't be expected to have, whoops, you can't be expected to have me remember 12 things about you, but
yeah,
one maybe I can get there with one.
yeah, yeah. Are there examples that come to mind where it could be like a brand, it could be like a copy that you put out for an ad, or just positioning for your company, where it's like it was simple, it says this. I'm curious what those look like.
You know, we've played with a lot of different angles around our product, and traditionally, what we've like our recurring theme that we kept coming back to is sort of this idea that we are where fun meets fitness, because we're a VR fitness product. We serve people who don't traditionally like working out, and so they need that dose of fun to really make it worth it for them. And
Yeah.
it's kind of an abstract concept for people to
Mm.
grasp. So over time, what we've refined that more towards is something that we call accidental cardio.
Ooh, I
Already,
like
that feels really tangible. I know what cardio is, and accidental is sort of like a weird word to pair with it. And so that's something that we've tested and we've polled our community, and it's a concept that people really, really like. And so we're starting to roll that into more places where we show up. And that's kind of the thing that we now know we want to be known for, accidental cardio, which is a lot stickier than fitness meets fun.
I love it. It's so cool. I'm curious, how many iterations did it take you to get there?
Several, several.
Super cool, super cool. Yeah, I've been watching Mad Men a lot, and there's a lot of inspirations in there.
Yes, yes, for
um,
sure.
cool. Well, I guess future looking, I want to hear a little bit actually about your company and the space, right? XR is a very interesting space for various reasons, but as XR converges with maybe smart glasses, maybe something else, how does marketing change when the surface is maybe the headset now in the future for a lot of things, right? How do you think about it?
I think it's more right now, I think the question in my mind is more how does the consumer change?
Mm,
Um, and what are like the use cases of this technology that's going to be most widely adopted?
hmm.
That will transform the marketing around these far more than I think anything else. Um, and a lot of it is still very much question mark. We kind of have some good signals of where that's going. And we're close with a lot of the partners that are bringing this hardware to market, which really helps to be able to be in the early stages of these launches. But I think those are the two things that like sit on my mind of, as headsets become more wearable, and that therefore become easier for the average consumer to adopt, how does that change the landscape of the consumers that we're trying to reach? And what types of content experiences are they going to be funneled towards more? And how do
Mm,
we then cater towards that in our marketing? Um, the actual marketing itself, I don't think changes in terms of like how we reach them and how we build brand awareness and all of that. I don't think changes too much,
mhm.
but I think it's just like evolving our understanding of the users and the value that they're going to be seeing in these products over time. Does
Yeah.
that answer your question?
It does, absolutely does.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I think your framing makes a lot more sense than my question. uh, uh, awesome. And then I guess also another question on people watching this and sort of thinking about, hey, how do we fit in this new world? What's the skill a young creative should build right now that you think AI is not going to commoditize in the future?
I think now more than ever, the skill that is valued and will continue to be valued is original thought and ideation.
Mm,
So the biggest risk that I see right now for young people coming into creative or marketing or really any discipline, is this temptation to really lean on AI to drive your ideation. And that to me is a real danger. I think that young people coming into, again, any field still needs to really build that muscle of thinking for themselves, critical problem solving, and like step away from the computer, find inspiration in real life, because that won't be the thing that AI can replace, in my opinion. Um, and I think that it's again very tempting to let AI take over that part of the thought process. And yet it does not produce, I think, nearly the quality of result that a good old-fashioned human brain can do. And
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's just such an important thing for anybody mentoring young people coming into their careers for the first time, to really like build this discipline of where AI can support you, but not replace that natural human brain power that you bring to the table.
100%. I also see the difference in folks who are more framework and principle oriented and they know how to break down things and come with their own opinions and ideas. How they accelerate with what they can do with AI is different from somebody's like, I'm just going to use Claude all the way to eternity, and then nothing interesting comes out of it, you know? Uh,
Yeah. I mean, we talked about that earlier too, right? Like you're only going to get as much as you put into it.
yeah.
And that I don't know that will, I don't see how that will ever change, to be honest. So, in this environment, it's going to be really easy for people to not build that muscle. And I think it's really critical that all of us here that are supporting and promoting AI to build the velocity that we all crave, I think we still have to mentor through that process of what it means to be a critical thinker and how to apply that with the support of AI to make the power of that even stronger.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, makes sense. Cool. Well, we're sort of in our last piece, which is hot takes. So,
Great.
so this will be just quick, rapid fire questions, no right or wrong. Just want to hear your takes on things.
Sure.
All right, let's start with a simple one. Coffee or tea?
Coffee every day, all day.
Okay. Are you a coffee snob?
I'm not a coffee snob, no, but I do have to have a cup of coffee within grasp.
Oh, I'm the same way, funny enough. I just need to see that it exists.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, um, in product marketing, do you think AI should be part of the pitch? Should it be in the tagline or it shouldn't be?
For consumer marketing, it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be. Ah,
It
okay.
shouldn't be. I stand on the principle that you sell the benefit before the feature.
Yeah, love it. Uh, what's the most overrated use of AI in the creative world right now?
Copywriting. I think
Tell us
I
more.
think it's copywriting is such a tempting skill to let Claude just do the work for you, but
Yeah.
um, it's really hard to train out of the instincts that a model will write in. And uh, I think like copywriting is something that I've always really valued as part of the craft of everything that I've been talking about. And it's always traditionally been a very undervalued skill set. And so it takes a fine eye to be able to spot good copy versus bad copy. But I think right now, there's nothing that's impressing me right now in the world of copywriting.
Yeah. I love that hot take because when if we ask the question of hey, what's the first use case AI can take over, it'll be the same answer. And yes,
100%. Yep,
yeah,
because
yeah,
it
yeah,
seems easy.
yeah,
It seems very easy, but there's a craft in good copywriting that I think has always been overlooked.
yeah, yeah. I think you answered this one already, but I'll ask it again. AI for ideation or AI for execution?
Neither, or both. No, it should be both. But I wouldn't peg it to one or the other.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, one thing you tell a marketer who's afraid of AI.
Um, AI can only replace you if you stop thinking for yourself. So it goes back to that conversation we were having just a minute ago.
Yeah, yeah,
But I truly think that's the most important thing. They should be excited about at AI. I don't want I like there's sort of this duality, right? Like build the muscle of being able to think for yourself and get excited about AI and go along with that journey, but don't forget that you personally and very natively bring value to the table in how you show up.
yeah, yeah. Awesome. And I love that how hot takes are sort of converging our conversation really nicely here.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I want to wrap up with at least a few takeaways for me. What I truly enjoyed talking about is the idea of simplicity and just like one clear value proposition you're serving to your users. And in service of that, I think just to be very simple and clear on what I got out of this is remember fundamentals and the customer is important. Talk through some of the benefits of the product. The rest will come, whether it's AI or no AI, it doesn't matter. But yeah, as we wrap up, any last advice, thoughts, takeaways for you?
I think that this is a very evolving world, and I think there's rightfully with that a lot of excitement and a lot of skepticism. I do think that eventually those two things will converge and we'll be in a better place on this topic overall. But we have to be sensitive about it along the way and cautious about it along the way, and do what you can to mitigate the risks while still taking advantage of the tools that have never been available and be excited about that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rae, for joining us. It was such a great conversation. And I'm Neha Mittal, your host at the podcast, where we'll see you next time with again real stories, amazing people, and hopefully no fluff. Thank you.
Thank you.